I feel really bad about doing this because Cody, if you're watching on video, was like bouncing up and down, excited, ready to go on the show. He sees NFL salary cap numbers or something we're going to talk about, so he's losing it. He's excited.
And D Orlando's on today on 3 and Out.
Yeah, D Orlando's coming on here about an hour and a half to talk some of the Falcons moves that they're going to have to make. And so Cody's excited. There's a lot of NFL talk, a lot of salary cap numbers, a lot of draft talk coming up today. And so I'm sorry to have to do this in the first segment, Cody, but we're going to get real philosophical here, and we're going to talk about some memories and some thoughts going forward, because tomorrow, March 11th, will mark the 1-year anniversary, at least in the sports world, of everything really shutting down across the country. I mean, as wild as it is to say it in the sports world, again, we are still in the middle of this, but in the sports world, it's been a year. 12 months battling every day. I know just in our industry itself, it's been tough, but it's been a year of us grinding. I know it's coming up on 9 months we've been doing this show. I think we've already passed that, but I wanted to get y'all's thoughts, because Kevin and I were talking about this in the car this morning. Is there's going to be things that you forget about over time that really stuck out to you, maybe when they happen, but it's just life goes on and new memories happen and you start to forget about things. But Cam, I was talking to Kevin. It's going to be wild to try to explain to somebody who wasn't here to experience it. I guess like maybe our kids or just people in the future. Like, yeah, no, I mean, we were listening to baseball games where we didn't know when they were going to be shut down and there was nobody in the stadium. So they were pumping in fake crowd noise into the broadcast to make it at least more similar to what we're used to experiencing, because if it was just the broadcasters in the hit of the bat or the ball in the mitt, then that would stand out to us and to mess with our minds and to make us and trick us and fool us into thinking we're listening to a full stadium in a regular baseball game. They would put fake crowd noise into it. How kind of messed up it was at the beginning, because the crowd would be way too loud. You're like, come on, guys, it's the bottom of the third. Nobody scored yet. There's 2 outs, and they're cheering like somebody just won the World Series. And so it took them a while to work it out. But there's just so many memories to me, Cam. I mean, you're going to explain to somebody one day that NBA games didn't have people at them. Instead, we had a bunch of flat screen TVs on the side of the court in Disney World, where the NBA was in a bubble trying to figure out a season that had gotten stopped during the middle of it. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I'm just curious what sticks out to you guys.
Sticks out to me that in each sport, you're going to have to crown a champion without like full fan attendance. I guess you could say that. And being able to tell, your kids or whoever hasn't watched it or who doesn't watch sports, but you may meet someone and like, yeah, every sport that we've watched in the pandemic, the crowd is just not what it used to be. Like college football, they had a crowd there, but we know college football. I mean, the crowd goes crazy at all games, and there's some conferences that didn't have, fans at all. So being able to tell that, it's going to be a cool story to tell, but it's also kind of weird at the same time.
Yeah, and I know it, like, sad is going to be the context of it, Cody, just because everything that's happened in the last 12 months. I just think it's going to be one of those surreal things, and maybe it's just something we forget because it's our mind protecting itself over time, I guess, from some of the sadder stuff. But just, and I'm sticking in the spectrum of sports here because really I thought what was the interesting thing was if you go back and listen to some of the shows we were doing, I guess around this time, it was we don't know what's going to happen with baseball. They're sending everybody home from spring training and we don't know when they're going to come back. I mean, there were basketball players in conference tournaments that were walking onto the court and teams were just kind of standing there. And then the refs were kind of huddling up and then everybody got sent back to the locker room. And then the coaches were like, well, maybe we just play it without fans the next day. If you guys are worried about this, no, we don't have a grasp on what's happening yet. And then obviously just all the talk about it going forward. But to me, another thing that stands out is the fact that the NFL was just a locomotive throughout this entire thing. Nothing was going to throw the NFL off course. I know they didn't play the preseason games, but they've been talking about not playing preseason games just because a vast majority of the players don't like doing it in general. But beyond that, draft happened when the draft was supposed to happen. None of the OTAs, anything like that got skewed. They happened the way they were supposed to happen. Then they canceled some like the NFL rookie symposiums and stuff like that. But beyond that, in terms of like key dates in the NFL, None of it got missed, and they rode it all the way through without any significant alterations to the season. I know we played an NFL game on every day of the week this year. The NFL was a locomotive all the way through the Super Bowl.
The only thing that really got messed up was the preseason, but no one really cares about the preseason.
Yeah.
But I remember this time last year, March 6th, whenever it like started.
Well, I mean, it was March 11th. Like, that's why we're talking about it, is because as of tomorrow, that's when Dr. Fauci was in front of Congress saying that this is going to be a pandemic. I think the CDC actually qualified it as a global pandemic.
Yeah.
And so that's when things started shutting down. San Francisco Mayor London Breed banned gatherings of over 1,000 people in the city. So we still just had like 1,000. You're gonna have a gathering of 1,000 people right now. We're like, whoa, let's just calm down with that. They were limiting it to 1,000 people. Like, that's where we were at this time 365 days ago.
Well, March 13th was, to me, I have a picture actually. It's on my Twitter. It's as my header, and it was our GM Kevin. And everybody knows this is our lifeline. You know, sports, when sports got canceled, it was Friday the 13th. March 13th was the show where we still weren't really knowing what's going on the 12th. 11th, it kind of started, but on the 13th, when they really said, hey, no sports, like none, like there's no sports. So we knew that Friday that we were going to be in for a rough patch. And I have a picture of him. I'm not going to lie. It looks like he's very sad, and it looks like I'm going crazy. And that's the date where I will remember forever. It's 2020, March 13th, Friday the 13th. Yeah. And it literally seems like it was yesterday, because I remember and then a little bit after that, a lot of this didn't work. It was just you and Kevin up here. So until we can figure out how to handle what was going on, because who prepared any of us for a pandemic? No idea. No one. The way you and Kevin were handling where it was amazing. You guys were talking about Tiger King and all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, almost a year ago to me, it's insane, you know, because the basketball, like Rudy Gobert, me and you were just talking about, you know, him like messing around and playing around, not really knowing, nobody really. Yeah, you know, fake, a pandemic, what?
What do you fake cough on microphones?
Yeah. And you really not knowing, you know, like whatever is big, like it's like a flu, whatever, you know, people not knowing how bad this thing really was yet. And then stuff got canceled. And that's when everybody was like, what? Like us, like you actually
start hearing the word lockdown.
And even like during 9/11, you know, whenever they only shut down for like a little bit. That's the closest thing I can think of. And then the first pitch came out with George Bush and all that.
Fourth grade. So
yeah. And I was in middle school, but it only shut down for like not like a week. This was shut down for months. Like, and we didn't know if it was going to come back this year.
Well, I think that the thing to remember, and with our context, I know at least for Kevin and myself, I know there's a lot of other people out there who had to do this. This is all relative, right? I mean, there are people who are missing somebody at their dinner table every night because of this past year. But in terms of our scope, it just, I think for Kevin and I, became about putting on the blinders and just getting through every day and trying to keep the company as normal as possible. But again, it's just wild that it's been it's been a year since the shutdown started. So, I mean,
well, everybody thanks you guys too, because we'll get tweets, we'll get phone calls saying, hey, I'm glad you guys were still running. You guys, while I was sitting at home, gave me something to listen to, gave me something to do, because, you know, you guys didn't quit. You guys kept on going through, and I really appreciate you guys for doing that.
Yeah, no, and like this whole video thing this is where it was bred from. Is like we kind of had a one camera setup before where we would broadcast on Facebook Live the shows, but now it became a necessity to actually continuing to broadcast when we were able to get Ben and BJ back on. And hopefully sometime in the near future, things will be back to normal. I know one of the groups I follow since the beginning called COVID Tracker on Twitter, and they've done a great job. I think the COVID Tracking Project is what it's actually called. They've done a great job just compiling the local municipalities and the statewide research, and they have readily said it that they're the last step in the gathering process, but they have made it charts and graphs and stats that are easy to digest for people out there to kind of see a trend. Yesterday, they announced that they're no longer tracking because they feel like the skew is headed in the right direction enough to where they can then focus their efforts more on how can we go about fixing some of the infrastructural problems. But hopefully we have turned a corner. I know with all the vaccinations happening, the president planning to buy, I think, 100,000 more, or 100 million, excuse me, more doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Hopefully we've turned a corner and are heading in the right direction. But yeah, just a 1-year anniversary coming up of the sports world shutting down. And so just some thoughts, some things that have changed, some things that maybe will never go back to the way they've done before, but hopefully sometime in the near future, we are back to normal in the sports world. Because I know for a lot of people, that's your escape. You want to come and you want to enjoy sports, and that's your escape on a day-to-day basis. But I did want to go back and reflect a little bit on some of the things that we're going to carry with us and some of the things that maybe we'll forget. But like I said, just some of the weird things stick out to me, like listening to Ben Ingram and the guys call baseball games in empty stadiums. Or, I mean, flip side of that, those guys for away games this year called the games from Truist Park. So when the Braves were on the road, the Braves broadcast crew was in Truist Park watching the game on the big screen at Truist Park, calling the game from there. So, I mean, and then you have the Braves making the run to the NLCS. Inside of all that, college football going off, and unfortunately not for all teams going off. I mean, there's a lot of players that have played a lot of different sports, especially spring and winter sports, that just won't get seasons back that were canceled. And I know the basketball programs like Savannah State, for example, they thought that they were going to get a chance to come back this year and play some conference games, and then that gets pulled out from under their feet this year. So they're still battling through it. Savannah State's going to play a couple of football games. They've got one coming up this Saturday, but only going to get a chance to play a couple in the spring. And so when you look at it, it's been since 2019 since they've been able to play a full season, and that won't come until this fall. So
you actually talked to Sean Quinn like the week or few days when they got canceled. I've never seen a coach more crushed in my life.
We were at the Savannah State spring game when all of the conferences started shutting down the tournaments. We were talking to Opio up in the press box at that spring game. So yeah, it's been a year.
Yep.
It's been a year, but we hope throughout the year, like Cody said, with Tiger King talk and all the other fun stuff. I mean, I was joking, Cody, we're coming up on the anniversary of the cereal draft that we did.
Oh, I love
this
it.
Past Saturday was National Cereal Day, where you took Frosted Flakes in the first round. I mean, just a terrible pick.
No,
just in the first round, you could have gotten them as an undrafted free agent.
I reached.
Yeah, you reached bad. How's that turning out for you?
I need.
You even have a box of Frosted Flakes at your house right now?
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You reached. It was a bust, but
Frosted Mini Wheats, baby.
We appreciate all y'all sticking with us through this past year. We hope we have brought some levity. We hope we have made you mad a little bit, so you can argue with us about some of our sports takes. I know some of them are bad. We got some bad sports takes. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. And you disagree with most of them, but that's why we're here. So you guys can tell us why you're smarter than us. We'll come back. You'll probably be mad about this too. I got a stat that I think Georgia needs to correct in 2021, and it doesn't have a whole lot to do with what everybody else is pointing at. We'll dive into that when we come back. And yeah, Cody, we'll get into some NFL salary cap talk as well. All that coming up next right here on Second Down. Cody mentioned Orlando Ledbetter will join 3 and Out coming up here in about an hour. But here on Second Down, of course, presented to you by the Uniform Source. 2 different locations in Savannah. Take care of all your needs. Doctors, nurses, if you need your scrubs, Uniform Source is the place to go. All the talk this spring, Cam, is centered around who in Georgia's spring practice. Just one name. We all know it is.
Oh, we don't know. But I say JT Daniels.
JT Daniels. Everybody, the talk is JT Daniels. Can he, in a full spring practice, be the guy who lifts Georgia's offense and lifts Georgia to the college football playoff and a chance to compete for a national championship? All those wide receivers coming back. Could JT Daniels be that guy? I have been more concerned with another aspect of the Georgia offense that I believe is going to have to be, as Cody pulls up a picture, I'm about to pull a complete 180 on him. I'm not talking about JT Daniels here, Cody. I'm sorry.
Really?
Sorry, I know you really wanted to show the mustache pic.
That's exactly what I could.
You really wanted to show the JT Daniels mustache pic. No, Cody, I'm going in a different direction.
All right.
JT Daniels and Georgia's wide receivers, I think those are a known commodity. What I think Georgia struggled mightily with last year, and some people may say it's because you didn't have that guy locked in at quarterback. I thought more so than really any year since Kirby Smart had been at Georgia, Georgia struggled relatively compared to other Georgia teams to run the football. And to me, it wasn't so much loaded boxes against Georgia's fronts. It wasn't a lack of talent. It was execution. All across the board. And I think really the loss of Sam Pittman showed through more so than any other coaching loss that Kirby Smart had experienced since his time at Georgia. I mean, Mel Tucker takes the Colorado head coaching job. Dan Lanning steps up, defensive coordinator. Georgia's defense is Georgia's defense, right? I think more so than any other coach that has left Georgia since Kirby Smart's been there, Sam Pittman moving on hurt Georgia last year. I'm not taking anything away from Matt Luke because he got put in the tough spot that a lot of other coaches got put in last year, which is a new coach coming in and losing players and having to implement his style of coaching without a spring, right? And then once you get into the season, it's just a speeding bullet of a train that where you're just getting ready for opponent after opponent. But I went back and I looked at some of the stats, and I went to 2017 because to me, 2016 was a wash for Georgia. You had a freshman, Jacob Eason, as taking a majority of your snaps as a starting quarterback. Nick Chubb was really back his first year after hurting his knee, and it was Kirby Smart's first year as a coach. So you're still – I got the stats, Cody. I appreciate that. No, I did my homework, but it was Kirby Smart's first year in Athens, so I'll cut him some slack on that one. But obviously everyone knows what happens the next year. 2017, you go to the national championship. And in 2017, you are running the hell out of the football. Georgia carried the ball 44.9 times a game in 2017 and averaged 5.8 yards per carry, which, I mean, Cam, that's 2 handoffs to Nick Chubb or Sony Michel, and you're picking up a first down every single drive, right? I mean, that was Georgia's offense. Jake Fromm did a good job with some play action stuff, but for the most part, can you use your laptop to look up stats so I can see Cam when I'm talking to him? Yeah, Cody's over here monopolizing computer space, but no, Georgia averaged 44.9 carries per game, 5.8 yards per carry. 2018, another highly successful season for Georgia. You go to the SEC championship, you lose to Alabama in overtime, but still a really good offense, right? You had solid guys on the outside, a sophomore Jake Fromm, who probably had his best season in 2018. And you're a play away in overtime against Alabama from winning the SEC and going to the college football playoffs. 40.4 yards per carry, 40.4 yards, or I'm going to try this again, carries per game, 5.9 yards per carry. Right?
Sure, you don't even need to put the stats up there?
No, I just need to remember how to speak. 2019, Cam, is kind of where the offense kind of hit the skids, right? You couldn't move the ball against South Carolina. You get utterly dominated by LSU in the SEC championship game. You just overpowered the East for the most part, and you can see Florida starting to creep back in where that game became closer and closer. I think that was the year Dan Mullen said we were 7 points away.
Yep.
That we were 7 points away, right? Georgia, 37.1 carries per game, 5.0 yards per carry. So you're almost down a full yard per carry in 2019. And then last year, 2020, the offense was what it was. Wasn't great. Defense was elite again. Offense wasn't great. You knew what you were dealing with the quarterback situation. 37.7 carries per game. So you're actually up a tick in carries per game from 2019, but you were down a half a yard per carry, 4.6 yards per carry. So you went from 2018, I'll call 2018 actually the best offense, just throwing the football, running the football balance-wise, because 2017, you had Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, but that defense was pretty elite too. 2018, you went from 40 carries a game, averaging 6 yards a clip, right, to 4.5 yards per clip, and throwing the ball around with Stetson Bennett and then JT Daniels once he got there. I went back and looked. LSU and Alabama, those were the two most elite offenses over the past couple of years. That's what everybody seems to be comparing what Georgia potentially could do coming up in 2021, right? They're like, JT Daniels has that chance to make that Joe Burrow jump. That makes me like cringe when you say making the Joe Burrow jump. 'Cause I've seen people say about, hey, Zach Wilson had a Joe Burrow-like jump in his senior year.
Stop.
Just stop. The only seasons I'm comparing to Joe Burrow is maybe what Baker Mayfield did and Cam Newton, just in terms of efficiency, numbers that he was able to put up and winning, right? Let's be real careful with the Joe Burrow comparisons. But both of those teams, as much as they threw the football around, I mean, last year, Devonta Smith wins the Heisman Trophy as a wide receiver. They were slinging the rock. Both of those teams ran the ball almost the same amount Georgia ran the ball last year. So for all the people out there saying, you got to throw the ball more, that's what's wrong with the offense. You got to throw the ball more. It's not the case. They were throwing the ball on par with what LSU was doing in 2019 and with what Alabama was doing in 2020. Both teams that went undefeated and won the national championship. Problem is, LSU and Alabama were doing it at a better clip and a more efficient clip. And obviously, the passing game was 1,000 times more efficient, but I'm specifically looking at the running game. So to me, Cam, it's not a one feature fix for Georgia on offense. You're expecting the passing game to take the next step, but if they don't fix the running game, I think Georgia could be in for a potentially disappointing season if they don't get this corrected.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand. In order to run the ball, you have to be able to pass. In order to pass, you have to be able to run. And it's like what you said, they've struggled. But if you look at LSU, they had a household name at running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Alabama this year, they had Najee Harris. I just feel like, me personally, Georgia does not have that household running back name. Zamir White, we like him, but is he those guys? No. So they have to go running back by committee. But it does start there. The O-line and running game, that's the only way Georgia will win. I like JT Daniels, but every game you can't air it out for 600 yards. Even Joe Burrow, even though it seemed like he had a great running game. When they played Bama, who was really the best player in that game on offense? It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They could not stop him.
Yeah, I mean, he was up there, but Cody, I do need a stat from you. In 2019, as I just throw it back, 2019, what was Joe Burrow's completion percentage? Because I think it was like 80% or something absurd like that. In 2020, Georgia quarterbacks completed 58% of their throws. So obviously, there is room for improvement as Cody pulls it up. 76.3% of his throws in 2019. That's what Joe Burrow completed. Almost 20% more than Georgia quarterbacks did in 2020. So, I mean, that's obviously room for improvement. But I go back to the Mississippi State game last year, right? Georgia could get absolutely zero going on the ground against a Mississippi State team that fielded like 50 players, right? I mean, You're Georgia. You got 5 stars across the offensive line, and you're getting eaten up by those guys. And I know that JT Daniels was cooking through the air, right? I mean, he had one of the best debuts by a quarterback in Power 5 history, but you're the University of Georgia, and you couldn't pick up more than a couple yards against Mississippi State's front. And this is not the Mississippi that was not the Mississippi State of the past, where you'd have a Chris Jones up front or someone like that who was going to go on to the NFL and be an all-world kind of defensive lineman. They have some good guys up front, but nothing like that in the past, and you couldn't get anything going with those guys. I mean, Cam, I know, again, as I said, you were replacing Andrew Thomas and Isaiah Wilson, which, say what you will about Isaiah Wilson's career so far in the NFL, those are 2 first-round picks at tackle, and you were replacing an offensive guard, but still, you got all those big-time recruits on the offensive line. You have guys like Ben Cleveland and Trey Hill coming back, Justin Schaefer. I watched those guys make mistake after mistake after mistake in those games, get beat by guys who were technically lesser recruits than them, and it was a consistent basis. The only game I can really think where Georgia was able to do what it wanted to do on the ground was against South Carolina, and again, that was a very undermanned South Carolina team that didn't have an Israel Mukuamu back in the secondary that maybe would have allowed them to stuff the box a little bit more. I think James Cook averaged like 17 yards a carry in that game or something absurd like that. Like that South Carolina game's an outlier. And also Georgia ran for over 330 yards in that game. Take that game out, those running stats look a lot worse for Georgia in 2020. So just to me, Cam, yeah, you're focused on this passing game in the spring and getting JT Daniels comfortable. At the same time, if I'm Kirby Smart, I'm looking over Matt Luke's shoulder saying you need to get these guys right, because this is the University of Georgia. As much as you want to say you want him to be the next Joe Burrow, you want him to be the next Mac Jones, like you said, Joe Burrow had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who led the SEC in rushing when they won the national championship. Last year, Mac Jones, probably his most efficient play was just turn around and handing the ball off to Najee Harris, right? Who I think had over 300 touches last year or 300 snaps last year and one fumble. One. And was a monster, right? So to me, it's not just about the passing game in 2021 for Georgia. You got to get back to where you're averaging 5.5, 6 yards per clip on the ground, because if you're doing what you want to in the passing game, Cam, there's going to be two safeties high and they're not going to be able to stack the box. You got to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. When you can run the ball, you can do play action. When you can pass the ball, you can just hand that ball off, and those safeties going to pin back and you can get 5 to 10 yards per play. So you're right. I mean, that's the thing they have to address. I think the defense is fine. It would be fine. The passing game, it would be fine. We have a slew of wide receivers. But the offensive line, yes, it was an issue last year. When you go down half a yard, that's a lot. Some people don't understand that. And then the running game.
Here's a better stat from that. Not just in 2020. In his career at Alabama, Najee Harris touched the ball 719 times and fumbled once.
Dang.
That's pretty good. I think DeAndre Swift did that like quadruple that in like one half against Texas in the Sugar Bowl. But it's just, Cody, I look at Georgia, and you're a Florida fan. Let's get the opposite perspective of it. What's scarier to you as a Florida fan? Georgia come out and slinging the rock around and just like picking up chunks at a time through the air, or when they're turning around, handing the ball off to a running back and it's just gapping you?
I've got nightmares of you guys having a dual threat. I mean, like dual running backs just destroying us with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel.
Like 42-7, right? That's the nightmare.
And it's always been like that. So speaking of from a Florida fan, I'm not afraid, of you guys bombing it. I'm afraid of you guys eating up the clock, pounding us up the middle, going on the outside. And then once you suck up the linebackers from do a little crossing route like you guys like to do.
God, you know what I've missed for so long that just hasn't been a part of Georgia's offense. And I won't say, because people put on Kirby Smart and the offense coordinators, Chaney and them, but it hasn't been a part of Georgia's offense in a minute, is if you're going to be able to run the football like that and those linebackers are going to suck up, hit the tight end of the seam.
Get them.
I mean, It's just one of the most devastating plays in football. And now you have a damn LeBron James-sized dude playing tight end for you in Darnell Washington. You figure that'd be a pretty easy target to hit over a linebacker. I mean, if you could start hitting 5-6 yards a carry with Samir or whichever other running back you want to put back there, because they're all good. If you could start hitting people because you're opening them up with those big old offensive linemen, and then you have Darnell Washington over the middle, and you have George Pickens, and you have Jermaine Burton on the outside. So many people I hear say, well, our friend Jake Crane from the J-Boy Show said it yesterday on 3 Nights. He's like, man, Georgia's got to start passing the ball on first down. I don't think Georgia's got to start doing anything. I think you have to be able to do everything. Right? That's what wins national championships now. Alabama was so dynamic. You were on your heels the entire time because you never knew what was going to happen. I think LSU was a little bit more of an outlier than what Alabama was, because they spread you out, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield on a swing pass kind of became their run game a little bit. And make no mistakes, they still ran the hell out of the football, but it was a different look. It was damn Jamar Chase and Thaddeus Moss and Justin Jefferson, the rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year in the NFL. It was those guys split out way wide, and then you were able to run up the middle with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I would compare more so to what Alabama was able to do last year with that style of offense, that's what you're looking for. When you come out in a set, you got 2 plays, and depending on what the defense does, you count the numbers in the box: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They got 8 in the box. All right, we're going to our pass play here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They got 2 safeties deep. We're going to our run play here, right? That's what you need to see out of Georgia. Like I said, you don't have to do anything. You have to be good at everything.
Yep.
And that's what's going to win a national championship for you. Maybe not Georgia, but guarantee you, look at the team that wins the national championship at the end of this year, they're going to be able to beat you multiple different ways on offense. So when I hear Buck Blue, love Buck Blue, but when I hear Buck Blue say, you got to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, that just sounds like to me a former quarterback trying to advocate for his fellow quarterbacks. I don't think you have to do anything.
Hang on. I want to ask you before we get out of here. I'm a James Cook guy. I think James Cook should be starting running back number 1. Do you think that, or do you think they should keep on giving Zamir White the chance of a guy? Because I know Zamir White was a 5-star, James Cook was a 4-star.
If that's your
that
argument,
even makes a
every running back
difference.
should start,
If that even makes a difference, I get it. But I think James Cook, he gets more, he's like 6.2 yards per carry, something like that. And he only had it like 30 something times, and that's it. And you got Zamir White getting it with like over 100 touches.
It was definitely skewed in Zamir White's favor. I think it'll be a little bit closer this year, but I think Kenny McIntosh is a guy
like him,
that's going to be pushing for a lot.
I like Kendall Milton.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall Milton's going to probably be. I think he's a better right now between the tackles runner and more of a home run threat than Zamir White. But I mean, James Cook, to me, you could put him anywhere on the field. I mean, he had the most explosive play against Alabama. That might have been Georgia's most explosive play of the season. To me, one of the more devastating routes, period, in football is that Texas route out of the backfield, just the angle route where you look like you're going into the flat and then you stick your foot in the ground and come back across the middle. And that poor linebacker that's in man coverage is having to play catch up with James Cook. I mean, Georgia did that against Missouri a few times. It's just a devastating route. I think that's a quarterback's best friend. So I think there's a ton of different ways they're going to be able to use these guys. I think you'll probably see some jet sweep stuff with James Cook this year and just have both of those guys on the field at the same time.
My favorite.
But I mean, I think it's going to be a running back by committee, but you're also going to have 5-6 plays a game that are specifically designed to go to a James Cook. I mean, that is the one interesting thing the past couple of years from LSU and Alabama is they were a featured back team. Najee Harris wasn't coming off the field, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't coming off the field. I mean, John Emery ran the football a little bit for LSU, but it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire's show because he knew how to catch the football. He knew how to pass block. I mean, he's small, but if you're a linebacker blitzing, you better have your helmet strapped on tight because he's going to stick his face in your chest and block the hell out of you. And Najee Harris was the same way, and Najee Harris was just as dangerous with his hands as he was running the football. So it is interesting. Georgia's always been a running back by committee kind of an offense. I mean, even going back to the Thomas Brown, Craig Lumpkin, Danny Ware days, or the Thomas Brown, Noshawn Marino, Todd Gurley, his junior year, you have Nick Chubb and Sony Michel on that team as well, Nick Marshall on that team. So Georgia's always been kind of a running back by committee, but I think this year you just go with the hot hand that you design some plays to a guy as explosive as James Cook. Right. We'll come back. We'll let Cody dive into some NFL salary cap stuff. The Saints way over the salary cap. The Falcons, not as bad as I thought they were going to be, with some room to get the salary cap a little bit lower. But man, the Saints have cut some players and they are still in a hard place. We will dive into all of that coming up next right here on Second Down. I hope you like Tyler Childers because I got caught talking to BJ, and Cody just kept looking at me as he had to keep playing the damn rejoiner. My apologies on that one, but when BJ asks a question about how the show is supposed to be set up, it can't be a simple yes or no.
It's true.
It is a full board discussion and psychological details and
as you mean set up,
psychological, philosophical, biological,
yep.
all of them.
Yep.
Just with BJ on those sociological, everything, all the logicals except logic. A lot of times when you're talking with him, but Cam, salary caps got to be under the firm number now of $182.5 million per team for 21. You got to get under that by March 17th. Now you're like, what's the NFL gonna do if I don't get under this salary cap? If I'm out here throwing Matty Ice $40 million contracts, I got Julio locked up too. What's the NFL really gonna do? Well, they're gonna do a lot. Potential penalties include loss of draft picks, cancellation of recent contracts that put you over the cap, and fines of up to $5 million per violation. So these teams are in a crunch to get under the salary cap here in the next week. And I have the list, Cody, of the top teams throughout the league right now in terms of over the cap. The Buccaneers are $400,000 over the cap. They're going to restructure some guys. They'll get under that. Vikings, $1 million. Giants, $5 million. Packers, $5 million. The Falcons, surprisingly only at $11 million after releasing some of the guys. Thoughts are Deion Jones, Grady Jarrett, Dante Fowler, Jake Matthews, guys like that will restructure their deals. Again, we'll catch up with Orlando Ledbetter here in about 45 minutes. But the Chiefs, $18 million over. The Bears, $20 million over. The Eagles, $25 million over. What hurts on that one, Cam? $33 million of that dead money to Carson Wentz, who is no longer on their team. The Los Angeles Rams are $29 million over. And then as of about noon, and this has changed, the Saints were $55 million over the salary cap. And they have since released Emmanuel Sanders, Nick Easton, Jared Cook, Josh Hill, Thomas Morstead, and Quan Alexander from their roster. So significant contributors. This isn't just like making small cuts. And I think, 30 million still over?
31 million.
There's still $31 million over the cap. Now, Cam, I quizzed you earlier about who's the name that we need to know for Georgia Spring. Who's the name that the Saints are waiting on right now to figure out their salary cap?
The name? Oh, Drew Brees.
Drew Brees. They are waiting on Drew Brees because he's posted Instagram workouts, and they're like, Drew, you need to calm the hell down. We have projected out that you were going to be retired. We literally can't afford this. And Drew's just out there slinging the rock around. Like, I don't know, man. Your ribs have healed up a little bit. I'm throwing the football to my kids in the backyard. I think I'm going to give this bad boy another go. Come on, one more round. One more round in New Orleans. One last ride. They're like, Drew, we literally can't afford it. If you retire right now, we're good. We can get under that salary cap. But he's like, you guys will figure it out. I'll see you guys at OTAs, right? I mean, Cam, the Saints are sweating right now waiting on Drew Brees.
And I love it. I love every last second of it. Let them sweat. Let them dehydrate, whatever it is. But I'm sure Drew Brees will retire. They'll be okay, but they're still gonna have cap issues.
I don't think he is.
It boiled down to it.
You
don't think so?
That's a once in a lifetime thing, right? I mean, at his age, you don't retire and unretire and come back. I mean, that's a lot to ask of him. A guy who's done it at a high level. He doesn't want the way that has gone out the past few years with the non-pass interference call against the Vikings, losing to Tom Brady, and then having Tom Brady play catch with your kids in your stadium. He's like, I beat you. I potentially ended your career, and I'm going to play catch with your kids. I mean, the disrespect. I think he might be coming back. But Cody, quickly, I wanted to ask you here. You see the Falcons, they're still 11 million over. They have some stuff to restructure, but I have to think there's going to be more cuts coming. I think Isaiah Oliver could potentially be a guy that you see hit the road. A couple other DBs could be potential cap casualties as well. But I think here, Cody, the Falcons can't just draft and rely on those guys to fill in a lot of these gaps. I mean, you just cut James Carpenter, who was kind of underwhelming, but I mean, he started at guard for you for a lot of games. You have some spots that need to be filled, and they can't all be done by draft picks. The Falcons are going to have to get real creative.
Well, I think they're going to restructure Jake Matthews, Isaiah Oliver. I think he's going to let go. Also,
You can only let go of so many secondary guys: Ricardo Allen, Keanu Neal, Isaiah Oliver. Like, eventually, you need somebody back there to play defensive back.
well, they got rid of Deion Jones. That was what 8-2-8. No. They need to restructure him at least because he gets.
I was about to say, did I miss like breaking news that the Falcons had gotten rid of an All-Pro inside linebacker?
Well, he's getting $8.2 million. Yes, he's getting $8.2 million. Maybe restructure that, give him a little bit more of a bonus, cut that down a little bit. You got Dante Fowler Jr. Dante Fowler Jr. is getting $14 million.
I think he's going to get a performance-based deal. He's going to restructure his stuff. Get a performance-based deal. Basically, you're going to take a cut in salary, but you will have a lot of incentives on there for sack numbers and stuff like that. I think he's definitely going to get restructured.
There's a lot of things they need to, but they can do it. You know?
The thing that sucks is like now Matt Ryan is now the biggest cap hit in the NFL. So he's
what's the cap hit? $40.9 million.
Yeah, it was Ben Roethlisberger, but he has since restructured his deal. So Matt Ryan is still your biggest hit, and so you got to play with the other $140 or so million.
No, Dante Fowler, I was wrong. Cap hit is $18.5 million. Now they need to do something.
Yeah, they're gonna restructure Dante Fowler. Again, we're gonna talk to D'Orlando Ledbetter here coming up in about 45 minutes. We'll come back, quick break, final segment of Second Down coming up next. Final segment here on Second Down. Big show coming up today on 3 and Out. The guys will catch up with D. Orlando Ledbetter coming up at 3:30. Also, Brooks Austin from Dogs Daily on SI.com going to hop on and give us the latest from the Darion Kendricks transfer. Where is he heading? Who needs to have a big spring for Georgia? Brooks will dive into all of that. But Cam, before we let you go, today is National Pack Your Lunch Day. So I want to know, when your parents did pack your lunch, what was the meal combo that slapped the most?
Dang, you just gonna hit me with that the last sec. Okay, a turkey sandwich
Okay.
with probably some dill pickle chips. I love dill pickle chips, or like Cool Ranch Doritos, and probably I don't drink soda, so probably some Hawaiian fruit punch.
Fruit punch,
Yep.
Capri Suns, it all slaps. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.